Hi, my name is Jacob Foss, and I beat the often path by building a company that connects smallholders, women, youth, and refugees in East Africa to some of the largest food companies around the world.
How do we eradicate extreme poverty? How do we fix some of the issues of rural communities? Well, Jacob Foss asked himself these questions while he was traveling in Africa, and his answer was to co-found Agricycle, a brilliant startup that has received millions in funding and is an official partner of the United Nations FAO. What do? Well, they connect women, smallholders, and youth in East Africa with global markets. They've helped tens of thousands of people. If you don't know what smallholders are, well, good news, I didn't either. We're both about to find out in just a few seconds. Jacob himself is a remarkable individual. He's been named to Forbes 30 Under 30. We're about to talk about what it means to follow the road less traveled, and just as importantly, how we can make money and build a business or a career of meaning so doing. Thanks again. This is the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer, and joining us right now is Jacob Foss. Well, welcome to the show, Jacob. It's an absolute honor to have you here. So first of all, we got to define some terms. What is smallholders? Because that's something that I had never come across until I saw your website.
So, smallholders is essentially a farmer who has a small plot of land under an acre, and they grow whatever they have in the area.
Okay, got it. So you yourself are from Milwaukee, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So how does a guy from Milwaukee end up changing the world on the other side of the globe?
So after I went to school in Madison, also in Wisconsin. Straight from college, I had the pre-med undergrad. I was thinking med school long term, but wanted to get away from school. So after college, went to Peace Corps in Ghana, in a real rural, remote area, mud hut, straw roof, no electricity type of setup. And from there, those 2 years, just saw how much opportunity there is to try to tackle the cycle of poverty that strikes those areas so hard. And instead of, going to the doctor's office for my career every day, I figured let's try something else here. I feel like I have an opportunity. And then slowly but surely built some supply chains, made those connections to eventually found Agricycle.
So you're next in a long line of people, myself included, by the way, for whom global travel completely changed everything in your life. So you go, you travel, not knowing what to expect, not knowing what's on the other side, and the result is it changed the trajectory of your entire life forever, basically, right?
Yeah, that's an accurate statement.
Okay, so describe how that process went.
Yeah, so just kind of starting in Ghana, they just kind of throw you in a little bit of training, cultural immersion, so you don't cross any chief's paths or anything like that on the wrong side. And then just dove in, had my little room, lived with a family, just went to farm every day, tried to prove my worth, if you will, or just like my toughness, I guess, because they come in as an American in a very rural area of Ghana,
Right.
And they think you're a doctor, they think you're like you have your master's and everything, and you're the best business person ever, the best mind, but your body is just weak as can be. So tried to kind of reverse that. Like, I can't operate on anybody. Don't ask me to perform any surgeries. Let me prove myself at farm. So then after that, you just kind of learn what they needed, or what they wanted, I should say. And then it was simply just a market, and they have resources, contrary to some messaging, the media might show of this impoverished Africa that's helpless,
Right.
That misguided media. And
donate $1 and that's the end of that.
Donate $1, yeah, give your shoes, all of that. And so just saw how many stories of you dump 5 tons of rice in the community, thinking you're feeding this village now, but those rice farmers now are competing with a product that they make that's literally $0. So why would someone continue to buy from them and feed their family if they just had it for free? If you have a pizza that's $10 or a pizza that's free, you're going to choose the free pizza.
Yeah.
So it puts rice farmers out of work. So it was just kind of a deeper understanding of, wow, we really mess a lot of stuff up without realizing it because we're so disconnected.
You don't say. I have to step in, though, at the beginning of this, because on behalf of both the internet and Americans, I have to inform you that legally you're not allowed to care about anybody who's not an American. So, it's us versus them. We have a country. You're born in Milwaukee, so you're not allowed to expand your worldview. It's forbidden.
Right.
So let's clear that up at the outset, right? because we matter,
Yeah,
and nobody else does, right?
exactly.
Okay,
That's
so
how it goes.
you proved your worth, or you started developing what I can only assume is just a wildly different set of circumstances, and you started to make a set of realizations. So, what were some of the realizations then, I guess, that dawned on you? Or, I mean, obviously, you learned, okay, my physical body is comparatively weak. I have strengths, I have weaknesses. Some of what they see me as is correct. Some of what they see me as is incorrect. So, like, what was the progression that made you realize, okay, A, I want to be more involved here, and B, that I can be involved here in this very specific way?
Right, right. Some things that just dawned on me through the experience was it kind of started at just like looking at the youth, just interacting with the youth there. The creativity was just off the charts. They would come, take a couple like cans, maybe some rubber something, and just like what we would view as trash, and then collaborate with each other. You know, they didn't have like an iPad to turn to, and would create like a usable car that rolled, and they could like rig it with kind of like a trajectory. Like they would rig it with a spring and then like shoot it out. And so they made this like working car out of what we would think is trash. So like
Awesome.
starting at kind of the base of children, it was just a different culture and showed how much like electronics can really just numb our minds. So it was just like an interesting thing for me. And then going towards, like I mentioned about resources, like there's so many resources there. That was one of the biggest things that I was just totally misconstrued on. And the labor for, like, obviously they're super hardworking, like some helpless people outside of Milwaukee, right? And then
Right.
going with both of those, there's just so many things over and over that they're so ingenious, from their farming adaptations to their irrigation systems they make, which just like is basically watering farms in dry season or watering farms in any season. And so just over and over, these people are brilliant. And so not that I would have thought anyone else is smarter or dumber, like I was at least aware enough to know that people are people, but seeing the ingenuity over here was incredible. It's just literally just the resources lacking, but the business mindset's incredible. So I got into like jewelry making with women. They wanted to make bracelets, necklaces. So I just like connected them with some materials, and then they took off from there.
Okay, so your life has changed. Your priorities are being changed. And I guess let's take a quick step back here to tell everybody about what Agricycle is and about where your product is now, so we have some context here. So radical changes, what is the product or solution or the set of solutions that you are offering at this point in time, reaching, tens of thousands of people in East Africa?
Definitely. So it's a global network and supply chain that makes those connections, right? From resources that would otherwise go to waste and people who are suffering from extreme poverty to areas of high buying power and making that connection. So we have 3 brands that do that. And the first one, I was taking through the example to kind of highlight what the company does, is called Jolly Fruit Co. It's a tropical sun-dried fruit of like mango, pineapple, jackfruit. So we take mangoes. There's a training component that starts it all off of how do you meet global food safety standards, right? You're in rural reaches of East Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. How do you make sure that those processing sites without what we would say is like a 5-star manufacturing facility can go through that whole supply chain and still meet, the gold standards?
Yep.
So rigorous food safety and processing training right off, a couple months to onboard these members. And then from there, they take the mango slices and put them through a dehydrator that we engineered. And this dehydrator is mobile, and kind of back to our conversation of just assuming we know what's best, the world revolves around, America. And USAID would give like large dehydrators that are great in capacity, but it'd be stagnant. And so it's put on this land who's owned by a man almost always. And then the women who were the target beneficiaries say like, oh, great, thank you so much. USAID leaves, pat themselves on the back. And then the man comes out of the shadows and goes, great, thank you. You can get off my land. Thanks for the prize. And legally he's right. So everyone else is screwed. Okay. So we figured that out and made these like single person size dehydrators that can scale through sheer numbers of the workforce and can be mobile. So there's no land claims. So anyway, that's like kind of the core of the fruits and the other products we have is take it, put this in this dehydrator that's as decentralized as possible. Wherever you go, it goes. And then we aggregate it from there through a series of aggregation centers, just kind of getting farther away from like the farm gate, closer to the facility where we do the final packaging, food safety processing, closer towards that like 5-star food safety center in Nairobi, that is. So that's the kind of journey of the fruit in East Africa, and we export it to wherever the client is. And that's a CPG, so consumer packaged good that you would see in retail shelves, okay. Dried fruit bag. On that, it has the QR code that tells the story of the actual women who farmed and processed that particular bag. So every bag has its correlation with a group throughout that region, and all these tens of thousands of smallholders that we have and microprocessors. That just tells their story of the impact, and it has the metrics of food waste and socioeconomic benefits. So that's Jolly. That's the first brand. And then that concept of taking food that would otherwise go to waste and then adding value to now make it a product is what we do for all the other brands. So a friend of my co-founder came to us and said, hey, coconut shells burn really well. Maybe you should turn it into a grilling briquette. I'm like, all right. As founder, like young founders, I was like, yeah, of course, it's brilliant. Let's do it. So we worked on the R&D bit of that, did some university testing with the claims of like how much better it burns in terms of temperature and duration than like Kingsford per se, and how much cleaner it is too, because you're on detergents and chemicals. It's just coconut shells and cassava starch. And so then we launched that brand, and that's called Tropical Ignition, selling an REI for that, and growing that distribution. So that's just a really cool one that I just would never have, I wouldn't have thought of any of this right away, 10 years ago, whatever, but that one definitely, like selling charcoal, why would I do that?
Right.
But, combats deforestation, saves trees, protects the planet, and greenhouse gas emissions too. So that one's a really cool environmentally beneficial one. And then our third one came kind of out of need based on the members in our network of saying, hey, we have really good impact because the Jolly Fruit can give 7 to 10 times the daily wage previously.
Wow.
Really good economic impact, but we only can make that impact when it's the season of the fruit. Is there any way you guys can do a year-long impact? Like, shoot, that's a really good point, because most of these farmers are now relying on us, right, for their income, because they have a really good thing going, and they put all their eggs in that basket, and that's just kind of how they have to do. They don't have that many eggs, So we were like, all right, what should we do? So then we just kind of took a gaze of all of the crops that are growing. There's almost 200 different crops. There's many species and everything, but 200 like food crops that we would know in the U.S. and create an ingredient portfolio out of those. So we take that drying step of, say, green banana or plantain or cassava, and you slice that same kind of thing, put in the same dehydrator through the same chain, and then we mill it into gluten-free flour. So that's kind of the core of that brand. It's called Field Better. It's a B2B wholesale. So we white label, which just means you sell an ingredient that a different brand then puts into a product and puts their label on it. So no one would see Agricycle or Field Better if it's white label, just for anyone who doesn't know that. And then that whole ingredient portfolio was our third, and as of now, last final brand, that we were able to get a lot more volume from these farmers and year-round incomes. And one of the coolest things I think about that was that came from the helpless people who don't know what's best for them, right? Like they literally dictated the direction of our business, and it went so much for the better. So that's just a really, I love that brand specifically for that, and I love all of it, but that's just a really cool, like, listen to who you're trying to work with. Like, people are going to be intelligent wherever you are, and they're going to have good feedback, especially when it's their lives that you think you can, like, just, it's ridiculous to not. But anyway.
And that's the kind of power that travel has in opening up your mind and seeing other cultures and other people and other experiences, which, like, I'm the biggest advocate for just in general. So let's try, if we can, to imagine a scenario where you didn't do that, where you stayed in Milwaukee. What do you think your life would have been like? Do you think you'd have been an entrepreneur if you'd stayed?
I can't see it. I think I would have, gone to Northwestern Mutual, and nothing wrong with that at all. But that's just a, big bank, big money headquarters in Milwaukee. And that's where a lot of, the talent, if you will, just people in general go. And maybe I would have ventured out. I'd like to believe it, but I don't know. Because once you travel, like you're saying, like you're getting it, it's just a cyclical effect. It just goes and goes and goes. You're like, wow, I gained so much personally for that.
Yeah.
learned so much, saw so much, and inspired, and want to do it more. I've been able to travel like a good amount of countries. Super fortunate for that. Just mainly starting through this work and sub-Saharan African travel. I was on a contract. Just me and my partner we got a car through the company and just drove sub-Saharan Africa and saw all sorts
How
of stuff.
Awesome is that?
All sorts of trouble. It was amazing.
Getting chased down by an elephant at some point, I imagine.
Chased down by a whole lot of stuff, that's for sure. And so, just experiences like that just truly open you up.
Since we are approaching the end of our hour, now I'd like to give you the opportunity to promote whatever you want to promote, or where can people follow you or be a part of your mission if it's something they're interested in joining.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, thank you for this. Is such a fun conversation. Glad you found us. I think the easiest way, we have a number of different socials, so I don't want to throw like 15 of them out at you, but if you go to agricycleglobal.com, so AGRICYCLE, Agricycle, and global, GLOBAL.com, that links to everything else. So you can sign up for everything that's offered there. Go check out some of the products. If you like them, great. If not, it's all right. Maybe refer people. That'd be wonderful. And just, find your passion. If it's not that, then go find something else. I think that's the key.
And to anybody who does that, you will discover not only what smallholders means, in case you didn't pick up on that earlier, but you'll understand a truly genius business model that's very clever and obviously has impacted a pretty impressive amount of people even already. And I'm sure that will only continue. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
So,
and thanks for the conversation.
Absolutely my pleasure. And with that, the official podcast recording is over. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Beat the Often Path podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes we've shared, it would mean a great deal to me if you subscribe to the podcast on your platform of choice or on YouTube. And of course, if you shared either the show itself or this particular episode with somebody who might want to hear it to help us grow the audience for the show, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. So if you've been a passive listener all this time, I get it. I understand. There's no big deal with that. But it would really, really mean a lot to me if you'd leave a positive review and help me grow this show. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.